the basically my neighbor on the west, Barbara de Sonia. I don't know if she's here. She's going to be put in a shade, and she has a garden on the east side, and she's afraid that she's not going to have enough sunlight. The structure actually now is about 14 feet, and when it'll be finished, it'll be 26 feet, so it'll be 12 feet higher than what it is now. And on my side, I felt that there was going to be a shade on the sun side if the sun gets there. But in the back end of my house, I feel that I deserve to have the sunlight because I have perhaps the only one in the block, what we call an environmental dryer. In other words, I have an old-fashioned clothesline. And if that thing goes up, I will not have any sun on my clothes to dry. It's not very important, but it's still a detail that I didn't think that at that point my neighbor cared about. So there is also another problem with that building, and that is a few houses down, there is another applicant who wants to build a three-story building. And he hasn't started because the whole neighbor has been against the idea. And for basically the same reason, that the character of the neighborhood, which is stucco and shingles, is going to be destroyed. And our neighborhood deserves the right of having a preservation source, just like the preservation park in Oakland. It took them 10 years to do it. And I think in Emeryville, we need that on our side of Emeryville, the north side of Emeryville, which has a significant historical background, because that side of Emeryville was the early side of Emeryville because it had a canal, and that's why our street is called Ocean Avenue. And the early settler, Portuguese, Italian fishermen, had the blessing of the church that is on Alcatraz there. So our street, my street where I live, had a canal there. And my house, from what I found out, is the first one who has been on the block. And other house came after. So because of that, because of the special character that our street has, I'm objecting about the second story. Not because of the story, the second story in itself, but because the character of the street is going to be defaced. And it's very important for me. And I think it's very important for my friend there. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Richard Ambrose, and I live at 1264 64th Street, one block to the south. But I'm a neighbor, and I'm concerned about preserving our neighborhood's character. And I was concerned when that house caught fire and was severely damaged last year. And I was gratified, I was really happy when I saw signs that the house was being rehabbed, it was being restored, it was being reconstructed, new foundation and so on. Then I saw signs of a new second story, and I asked, and it turns out that there apparently was no permit. I'm concerned about non-permitted construction in general. It increases the number of cars on the streets. We have there are too many cars on the streets on my street, and it could happen also on Ocean Avenue if additional units are added in that area as well. It would also destroy the roof line of the facade along Ocean Avenue. The houses to the west are one story, and most of the houses to the east are one story. This would change that roof line. It's true, it's the building in back is 2-story, but that's off of another street. Along Ocean Avenue, they're one story, except for one exception. And I'm concerned about that too. I'm concerned about the precedent that it would set, two ways. One, it would set a precedent that it's okay to destroy the character of the historic buildings in the neighborhood for profit, for demolishing and construction of new units and new houses. That has been proposed for a building to the east. Also, I'm concerned about the precedent that might be set that someone trying to construct a new floor without a permit is caught, that it's okay. You just go ahead and submit your proposal, and you go ahead. So it sets a precedent to try to construct without permits. And there are other instances. You don't see them. They're internal, but they exist in Emeryville, and it increases the number of people living there. It increases the number of cars. We should be careful of our building codes. We should be careful of our permit process. We should be careful of many things like that. So anyway, I recommend that the application be denied. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Keith Bodwee. I live at 1254 Ocean, and I pretty much concur with everything that's been said here. And, it's just starting to feel like a tough fight over there, and I just feel like we're losing so much in our neighborhoods, and the development is just encroaching, and I just feel like, we're barely hanging on. And I think at what expense do we let another house go, another house be radically altered, another house be taller, another person in the neighborhood loses their sun, loses their view? As someone you're all aware of the situation with the house at 1258, which is next door to me. As someone who's facing that, it's really, really depressing. I also just learned that that house in Vallejo is going to be torn down now. So, I just think, as a citizen and someone who lives in Emeryville, who's been here a decade and who really loves it, anything that can kind of stop this trend of everyone being able to cash in. And even at the smallest level, I mean, that property has two single-family houses on it already. Like, where does it stop? Where do we draw the line? So that's all I really want to say. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this matter?
Jim Martin, speaking as a resident within 500 feet. I'm glad there was finally a landscape plan. If the commission decides to approve this tonight, I'd hope that you at least ask and clarify the parking issue. To go from a two-bedroom, not even have the floor plan, but to go from a two-bedroom and to grandfather in a four-bedroom unit, which is already underparked, the entire property is underparked, just is a little challenging to me, because on-street parking really is in demand in this neighborhood, and it's going to exacerbate the problem. If you do give this applicant additional entitlement, I see no reason why the city can't expect the entire property to be improved. The rear unit needs painting, the yard needs work. I don't think the landscaping should be in the 10 feet in the front, and I don't think the commission has gone through this before in the Triangle neighborhood, looking at what it means and looking at the entire property. We shouldn't allow concrete to be poured up and around the building to simplify the landscaping. You don't even have the information here to determine whether you got a 3-foot fence or a 6-foot fence. No one could take this plan and go out in the field and know what they're doing here acceptably. So I hope that you give staff direction, if you approve this additional entitlement in some form, to make sure the entire property gets upgraded as part of the benefit that this property owner will enjoy by the additional units. The second story actually will mask some of the ugliness of the building in the back, but there are concerns about light, and maybe one of the ways to address that is give them 3 bedrooms, pull back the footprint of the second story so that you've got something that still respects the original roof line around the building. But I think it just has a ways to go to clarify the parking issue and this whole idea of grandfathering, and that if he's getting something more, he should be improving that property so it does not look like it does right now.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak? Hearing no... Okay, hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioner comments?
I'd like a point of clarification regarding the illegality of the original construction on that building. What's that about, Charlie? Because it's not in the staff report.
There was some confusion about this. This project came through during the period last year when we were in the process of amending the RM zone regulations. And also, there's another ordinance, the residential demolition ordinance, which now requires design review for single-family homes. We were under the impression when they first came to the counter, we didn't realize there was another unit in the back, and we thought that this was a single-family home. I mean, we hadn't gone to the field. We just were presented with plans at the counter, and we looked at it, and it, said single-family home. Well, previously, a single-family home would have been exempt from any kind of zoning approvals. Design review, use permit, single-family homes were sort of sacrosanct. We issued a building permit for reconstruction of the existing house that was damaged by fire. And, of course, I mean, that was okay. That was a replacement in kind, so no kind of planning permit is required for that. A building permit, of course, was, and we issued that building permit. They also applied for a building permit for a second story. That was a separate building permit that was applied for. We were in the process of reviewing that, but as sometimes happens, construction began on that second story before the building permit was issued. It was at that point that we realized there was a second unit on the lot, which meant that it was not exempt from design review as a single-family home. So now it did need design review. So we did not issue the building permit for the second-story addition because it now needed design review. And subsequently, the RM zone regulations were amended, so it also now needed a use permit for the floor area ratio. As soon as we realized this, we sent the building inspectors out and issued a stop work order and told them to stop work on the second story, which they did. And they have not done any work on the second story since then. We advised them they now needed to come to the Planning Commission. Oops, I guess my time's up. Sorry, I can't speak anymore. We advised them they needed to come to the Planning Commission for approval of the second story, and that there was no guarantee they would get that approval, and if they didn't get that approval, the house would have to be restored back to its original one-story condition. So that's what happened.
Thank you.
Commissioner comments?
Well, I kind of go along with what Jim was saying, that I think the maintenance of the entire property needs to be one of the conditions of this thing. I haven't looked at it, and certainly we need a real landscaping plan. And, I think the landscaping plan should include the entire parcel and should meet all the conditions that we currently have about drainage. I guess that's all I have to say.
Yeah, it seems like almost like we're in a study session for this applicant.
Yeah.
And my only concern was the parking, but then that was brought up. So from a 2-bedroom to a 4-bedroom that has no parking, I don't know. It seems like you could do something like the woman who came in here earlier and showed that plan of having a nice little one, at least one spot where she had a nice garden and landscaping details there.
May I respond to the parking issue? I think
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
there's some confusion about that. The zoning ordinance for 2 or more dwelling units requires 1 parking space per unit for studios and 1-bedrooms, and 1.5 parking spaces per unit for 2 bedrooms and larger. So if you're 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, you have to have 1.5 parking spaces. So increasing this unit from 2 bedrooms to 4 bedrooms does not increase the parking requirement. If they were adding an actual unit, and I heard one speaker imply they were adding another unit, but that's not the case. It's still 2 units. They're just making one of them bigger. Under the zoning ordinance, that does not increase the parking requirement. So the degree of nonconformity with the zoning with regard to parking does not increase. So we have really no authority to require them to provide more parking.
Except that they're increasing their FAR, or at least they're requesting it.
Well, the zoning requirement for parking is not based on FAR.
Understood.
For residential.
What is the FAR for that area?
Just changed.
You mean, what is the
FAR for the?
what is the code
Yeah.
say? 0.5, 0.5, and that can be increased up to 0.75 with a use permit.
Oh, it can.
Yes, that's why the
Before
separate.
you said FARs are absolute, they're never changeable. That was on the other part.
Well, no.
Never mind. Now they weren't flexible, but they're flexible now.
I'm done. I wouldn't approve it as it's drawn here.
I'll go next. I really would like to see a landscape plan, and I don't want to see any sidewalk in the front. I think there needs to be a treatment that minimizes concrete and hard space in the front. The city has been trying for many years to eliminate concrete in front of residences, and I really think we need a landscape plan. I don't know if it necessarily has to come back to the commission, but we could condition that that be submitted to the planning director and he review it, you know, listening to what we're saying tonight to make sure that everything is in compliance with what we're looking for. For example, not higher than a 3-foot wooden fence along the street frontage, adequate landscaping.
That is already in the conditions. It's a standard
And
condition of approval.
What about some maintenance on the rear building?
And then also, I think it has to be for the entire site. One question that I have is, I wanted to get back to the windows, and on the second story and the location of the windows, it's really hard to tell from these drawings, but no one brought this up, so I will. It's just the whole issue of privacy, and for the bedrooms up on the second level, and the orientation of those windows, is there any concern that we need to look at in terms of privacy, looking down into the units on either side? I mean, it's hard for me to tell with the drawings. I don't think it's a problem, but can you speak to that? Do we have any concerns, or are you concerned about that, Gail? Oh, and there's one on the other side, too.
There's two.
One looks like a bathroom window.
There's house on both sides.
Yes, there are one-story houses, single-story houses on both sides, and where are my elevations here? And excuse me a moment while I bumble around. Yes, so on the east elevation, you can see it's a slightly larger. Well, it's. The size of it is called out to be the same as what's here, but as it's drawn, it looks slightly larger. And there's just one over here. The house on Mr. Carpio's house that is right next door is oriented this way. So where the window would appear in the second story would be, approximately here.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then what about on the west elevation? There's going to be 2 windows there.
Okay, on the west elevation, this survey, for some reason, shows the building at 1270 as here, but this is actually Barbara DeZonia's garden shed. This is not her actual house.
This plan shows it.
Her house is oriented almost exactly in line with where the front building is on the site, the subject property.
Yeah.
Okay, on the site plan, it shows that, in fact, 1270 and 1268 are almost directly in line. So the positions of the windows on the west elevation, since it's staggered to the back, would probably be around here and here. So they would sort of correspond with where her house is. I unfortunately do not know the location or the positioning of the windows on her property, but as it stands, they will overlook it because they'll be higher than
Yeah, I know, but it's just a question of, I know we've heard from residents in the past about concerns about, privacy and not so much even looking into the home, but into the yard. So
Into the
that's
yard.
why I was asking.
It looks here like they're not looking into the yard.
It doesn't look like that, but I just want clarification on that, Buzz.
As a boon, perhaps, to the folks who move in here, she has nice planting areas back there, so they'll be able to observe her roses and her raised beds.
The rear house is 2 stories
The
already.
rear house is the same as the proposal here. It is 2 stories, but it's staggered in the same way. It has, it looks like the same thing. In fact, during the course of my research for it, I pulled the building file, of course, and this unit to the rear that fronts on Peabody actually had started out as a single-story unit and then was increased with the second floor. So it was increased in the same way that this is proposed to be with the original.
When was the other one done, and was it permitted?
It was, and it was done, I believe, sometime in the 80s. And yes, the only reason I know about it is because there were permits pulled. They're in the building file. So this, where the roof line is now, will be staggered back from the street about 11 feet, as I said. And on the unit that fronts on Peabody, it's the same situation. It has like a low, almost a, it's actually, there's actually like a sitting area on the unit that fronts on Peabody. It's that much of a stagger, and it's a flat roof there. And from there, it increases in height to 26 feet, which this will echo, and they'll almost sit like bookends to one another on the lot. Does that somewhat answer some of your questions about the orientation of the windows?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to propose that we approve this application subject to the planning director enforcing all the conditions that we've discussed.
Which were what, landscape plan?
Landscaping,
and
maintain
maintenance and-
the back
Of the
building.
entire property.
Yeah.
Paul, did you have any comments?
No, I think that a landscape plan is appropriate. I just wonder what the standards and the standards are for submitting documents to the planning or to the planning department. Or don't we require a floor plan at least to? Don't we have a handout that says you must submit this with your plans and a floor plan, existing floor plan, and then the revised floor plan, something like that?
There probably should have been a floor plan with this application.
Pardon?
There probably should have been a floor plan with this application.
Okay. Good. So it's difficult to read what they're adding and where the windows are and how they look on the adjacent property without a floor plan. So that clarification, I guess we had to get secondhand. I would second Mr. Hoff's motion.
Thank you.
I just want to
Thank
be
you.
clear on what these conditions are. You want a landscape plan that covers the entire parcel, and specify the less concrete in the fence, and in the front yard and the fence no more than 3 feet.
And that the drainage issues be dealt with.
I'm not sure what you mean by drainage. Are you
Well-
speaking about stormwater treatment?
Yeah,
Well, for a site this small,
you don't.
it's just what we call best management practices.
But you talked about the fence. You mentioned the
I
fence.
mentioned that. Now, there was something about maintenance of the entire property.
I think that I had gone by, and my impression of the rear property on this lot is that it isn't in very good shape. It's not very well maintained. There's broken concrete at the front on the Peabody side with weeds coming through it. It's in need of a lot of help. And, pardon me? Paint. It's in need of paint. It's in need of significant maintenance, and I'm not quite sure how we would frame that condition in order to cover the items that need to be covered, because between the increased height, the shading of the neighborhood, the changing of the character of the neighborhood, I have a lot of concerns about it. There's also a street tree in the sidewalk that at some point was sawed off at the bottom, which should be replaced. Yes,
You need to speak to the
You have to
microphone,
come to the
sir, and
microphone,
introduce
sir.
yourself.
And you need to speak into the microphone, please.
My name is Gurmel Singh Nahar. My property got paint job just last year, before that fire. It's got new paint, it got new windows, double pane window.
Was that
My
the property on
property-
Peabody Street
My
as well?
property is a lot better shape than neighborhood.
Is the property on Peabody Street also painted?
Yeah. I don't know who, anybody can go and look at the property. It's in better shape than my neighborhood. You can see my next door. I don't know, everybody know that, I don't have to tell you.
we're familiar with
My
that
property
one.
is a lot better than all the neighborhood.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyway, so there's a motion. Do you want to clarify the items that you're concerned, that you want to have?
I think the only one that I'm unclear on is the upgrading and maintenance of the property. What does that mean?
It means that we have laws already in place to dealing with blight and that kind of stuff, and that probably would fall under that category?
Well, this property hasn't been targeted by the Community
No,
Preservation
I mean,
Committee.
if it gets to that stage,
Oh,
we have,
certainly, if
we
it
have
gets to that-
ordinances and laws
Yeah.
that apply to that kind of thing.
So you're saying, so you're saying the maintenance and upgrading of the property would not be one of your conditions?
Wouldn't be one of mine, no.
Considering that they are asking for a conditional use that they're not automatically entitled to, I think that it would be
sounds-
appropriate
That
to
sounds familiar.
have upgrading of the entire parcel.
I just need to know what that means, so we are sure we're looking for it. You mean
Well,
paint
I
the
think a
rear,
level of, all I could suggest would be a level of maintenance that,
ongoing maintenance?
well, current maintenance, Gail said that she drove by and it appeared to be rather poorly maintained.
Well, the front's under construction, it's hard to
Yeah,
tell. The
but-
rear is not looking very good.
Well, we have a standard condition of approval. I don't know if this is enough, but it says the site and improvements shall be well-maintained and kept free of litter, debris, weeds, and graffiti. And then it says any graffiti shall be removed within 72 hours. All
Okay.
landscaping improvements
That's
shall be
fine.
maintained in a healthy growing conditions at all times.
Then is this, can we have this be official notice that these things need to be upgraded on the parcel that fronts onto Peabody to maintain the property in good condition? If we've got weedy conditions and broken pavement, doesn't that qualify
We
under that
we
condition?
can clarify this maintenance condition to say that, any existing weeds and other debris shall be removed, or something like that.
So,
Fine.
Well, I guess re-landscaping or upgrading the landscaping on the entire parcel would take care of a lot of these problems, wouldn't it?
We're asking for, as a new condition of approval, asking for a new landscaping plan that would be
Cover the entire site.
be to the satisfaction
No,
of the
actually-
planning director. Are we not?
Yeah, you have a condition
Yeah.
of approval. It's page 6, number 4A2, that says, prior to issuance of a building permit, applicant shall submit a detailed on-site landscaping and irrigation plan for the approval of the planning director. And we can just clarify in there that it's for
Of
the
the entire
entire
site.
parcel, for the entire site.
okay.
Okay, that's
And
good.
the street tree on Ocean Avenue.
Well, you mean if that tree is to be removed?
It's been cut off at the ground level. There's a stump.
How recently was that done?
I don't know, but there's a tree well with a stump in it.
Okay, my only hesitation about that, and we can certainly do that, is that that's on the public right-of-way, so that would be the Public Works Director would have to deal with that.
Someone should deal with that.
Okay. So you want a new street tree? Right?
I'm sure she does.
Okay,
Yes.
got it, new street tree.
Otherwise, anybody gets to come out and saw it down, and say, I don't know what happened.
Call for
Mm-hmm.
it.
Well, we have an ordinance that addresses that. You don't need a use
We have
permit.
laws that address that.
Right. Okay,
So,
you ready?
I don't have any more.
Okay, let me just recap here. We have a motion, and actually, I should ask Commissioners Hoff and Germain, who maker and seconder of the motion, are you in agreement with these
Yes.
Yes.
things?
Yeah.
Okay, landscaping in the entire site, 3-foot fence, no more than 3-foot fence in front with less concrete, best management practices for stormwater, which is standard. Existing weed and debris shall be removed, and a new street tree in front.
Fine.
Right? Okay. You ready for the vote?
Ready.
On the motion, Commissioner Cardoza,
Aye.
Commissioner Flores,
no.
Commissioner Germain,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoff,
Aye.
Commissioner Jeffrey,
Aye.
Vice Chair Donaldson.
No.
Right. 4 ayes, 2 noes. The application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
So it is a no issue.
Anybody want these?
People need a break.
No.
Now, let's,
On the next item, I need to recuse myself because I'm a racquetball player.
I as well must recuse myself.
Badminton.
So we're on public hearing item Golden Gate
Big
Badminton
badminton
Club
fans.
at 4230 Hubbard Street. And Diana's gonna do the presentation.
I know. If I may, for the record, both commissioners are recusing
this is
themselves
Oh, I'm sorry.
because they live within 500 feet of the project.
Thanks for the clarification. Oh, jeez. You get the whole thing, at least Pelican Bay. That was painted last year?
Sure.
Ready?
Pelican Bay, the whole thing. I mean, that's ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. You guys are just. Get the thing painted. Oh, we're ready. Do this.
Whenever you are.
Born ready.
What's this light here?
Okay. This proposal is an 8-court badminton club.
It's overhead light.
On the corner of Hubbard Street and Sherwin Avenue. That's upside down.
Where are we?
On the corner of Hubbard Street and Sherwin Avenue. In the concrete tilt-up warehouse there. Here's the Hubbard Street part where it's proposed, and the part of Sherwin Avenue that it's proposed in. The applicant, Mike Yang, is a badminton champion and has a club in Menlo Park. And the project is opposite Emeryville Warehouse Lofts and Sherwin-Williams. Here's his club in Menlo Park. The current tenant there is Ace Supply, and the neighbors within the building are Chiron Novartis, Pete's Coffee and Tea, Interior Motions Flooring, and Pacific Flooring right next door. The club would include a changing room and a pro shop.
Can you focus
and-
that a little bit, Diana? I know my eyes are shot, but I think we can get a little.
This machine, can it focus?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought it was autofocus.
Is it? No, there's a button I pushed before. There we
There
go.
you go. Oh, how about that?
You just pushed the autofocus button. Okay. It also includes bleachers for people waiting to play or watching friends play.
No, no power. 7106, and then one is disarmed,
There are only 2 exterior additions proposed. That's a light next to the entry door and a sign, which we'll look at later. The project involves demolishing the existing restroom and offices and filling in the existing loading dock. The club would be open from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 4:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. on weekdays and from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends. The Park Avenue District Committee generally expressed support for the project but did express concern about parking. The applicant has discussed the project with the Community Services Department, the possibility of probably having classes there, and has a letter of support from the interim director. The project is exempt from CEQA because it's a minor alteration of an existing structure, and it requires a use permit because it's a commercial recreation, indoor sports and recreation use in the IL Light Industrial Zoning District. This recreation use is compatible with the residential lofts across the street because badminton is a quiet sport, no balls bouncing. The project would generate about 14 trips during the peak hour between 5 and 6, and this is 9 more than the about 5 trips during the peak hour of the previous warehouse use. Just as a standard part of our fees, the applicant would pay a traffic impact fee. The fee in your packet is incorrect. The correct fee is $8,606. And this will help to pay for improvements that are in the fee study, such as, for instance, a left turn pocket on Horton at 40th someday when that's warranted. The project requires a sign approval. The sign consists of individual letters and shapes attached to the wall. It's 3 feet by 12 feet, and it's about the same size as other signs on the building, but it would be lighted. The color of most of the letters are a dark blue, so staff believes it probably won't be overly bright. It's a concern because of the building across the street. The project also requires a parking variance to waive the off-street parking requirement. The findings for that, the first one is a hardship. Is there a hardship? Well, this property is between 2 places where there are or are going to be restrictions on truck movement, which the property owner has stated is making it difficult to lease that space out to a different warehouse when this one moves. When Park Avenue gets rebuilt, trucks will be able to go across Park Avenue on Hubbard and Horton, but they won't be able to turn from Park Avenue onto Hubbard and Horton. And on 45th Street, trucks are prohibited on the block next to Horton Street because trucks making that turn have run into the parked cars there. So that would be the basis for the hardship finding.
So Diana, right now, the west side of Hubbard is no parking? Can you explain with the surrounding streets where there is existing no parking? Is that
There
shown?
is red curb on this side of Hubbard right now, and in fact, I'll get to that part of that
Okay.
would be able to be removed. Another thing we should think about is that the project only takes up 14% of an existing building. It's reuse of an existing building. The parking requirement for the previous warehouse use, of course, it's legal non-conforming because it was there long before our zoning ordinance, but it would be, because it's 13,800 square feet, at 1 space per 1,000, it would be 14 spaces. The proposed use, badminton is not actually listed in the zoning ordinance, but staff is using the racquetball courts as a basis. The racquetball court standard in the zoning ordinance is 1 space per court. So that's, because there's 8 courts, that's 8 spaces. So the parking requirement for this use is actually lower than the parking requirement for the previous use. And yes, there is red curb on the other side of the street. And because this property will no longer be needing to have big trucks backing into the loading dock, they will be able to go to the traffic committee, transportation committee, and get this red curb changed into a place where people can park.
Great.
And
Which
that
will
should-
provide for how many additional parkings along Hubbard?
I think it will gain them 5 spaces,
Okay.
depending on what this radius is.
2 of them are existing, it says, though, on the plan.
Oh, we're on the west side, we're talking west side,
Oh,
which
On
is
the
all red
west side of
zoned
the
right
street.
now, for
Yeah,
the, so that
this-
trucks can move.
This drawing is showing that there are 8 spaces around the project on the street. Okay. I think I've covered all that. The applicant has offered to provide a 10% discount to players who arrive by walking, cycling, transit, or 4-person carpools, and to install 6 bike racks alongside the building so that 6 bicyclists can park there. And that's 20% of the people that would be in the building at the time, just about.
Where's the property line here in the right of way?
The building goes to the property line.
So that's all right
That's
of way.
in the public
with
right of way. It's just asphalt now.
Okay.
And this drawing also shows a striped walkway and some bollards to keep the cars from parking too close to the building.
So that's
So-
not the railroad tracks.
The dotted line is the railroad tracks.
Oh, okay,
So right now, the cars straddle the railroad track closest to the building,
okay.
but if we put bollards there, there's plenty of room for them to park straddling the other railroad track, so that people have room to walk.
And are the bollards proposed by this applicant, or is the intent for the property owner to carry the bollards all the way down to Park?
Well, I proposed the bollards, and I wasn't really thinking any farther down because the people
It's all roll up.
will probably be parking here. And yes, there will be loading over here.
The plans don't exactly line up with one another. The sheet that shows the entire building plan,
What's that number?
it's 3 of 8. Shows a different proportion for the space
Then what?
than the proposed floor plan, sheet 1 of 3.
The proposed,
You know, one of them has a sloping wall and the other doesn't. The ACE supply appears to be narrower.
well, the
A little
plan,
confused about that.
the floor plan was produced by some folks who are doing some facade improvements.
The dimensions
Produced
don't
by
line
the
up.
same people that produced this plan. Oh, yeah.
So the building's really not square.
The building's
No,
not
but
square.
also the space is not the same proportion either, as shown in the proposed floor plan. You know, it's longer and narrower.
So is your point, it's certainly going to affect the the layout of the interior use?
Yeah, I mean, which one's right?
Well, I see longer dimension on the plan of the overall building than I see on the proposed plan. The
Yeah, that
proposed
shows-
plan is 129, and the other plan is 133.5 feet.
Yeah, but and then it's 109? I don't,
139, 129.
No, the
versus
width, or
133.
the depth, I guess.
And then the 109 is for the adjacent space. This is not a very good drawing. It's hard to read the dimensions.
yeah.
But the dimension for this property, this leasehold, is 133.4 on this drawing.
Right.
On this drawing, it's
28.
129 or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's like a 4-foot difference between the two drawings. But this is just to give you a general idea who's in the building.
But
Well,
the width
we've-
looks even narrower.
Right, the question is whether on Hubbard, we've got enough width in the actual footprint to accommodate all these improvements. You've got corridors, you've got doorways, you've got toilets. Is the discrepancy in the squared footprint going to translate into something that can actually be built?
Well, I think the dimensions on the proposed drawing are smaller than the dimension in the overall drawing, so they should have enough room, because this is 129, and I think I checked this in this direction earlier. This is 108.
Well,
Oh,
if it's
it's
the
a lot
right
less than
depth, then it's too wide to be the same proportion as the one shown on the overall building.
Trying to find a dimension on
Maybe
here.
we shouldn't worry about it.
That's
Yeah,
as much of an answer as I have to
I
that.
don't know.
I don't know enough about the regulations. Maybe when the applicant comes up, the applicant can explain. So we'll resolve that when the applicant.
I would just
comes up.
comment that if it turns out that the space is a little narrower or a little differently shaped than what's shown on the proposed floor plan, it looks like they have some room to, in that storage space that's up in the
Oh, yeah.
north end, they could shrink that down quite a bit, and that wouldn't make much difference. And it may be that the courts may have to get pushed a little
Or
closer.
change the pro shop
a little
dimensions.
closer
or something.
together. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's
Okay.
continue.
So, to continue about the parking story, the applicant took photos at 5 o'clock on a Thursday evening. There was one car parked on the Sherwin Avenue side of that property, and no cars parked really right in front of that leasehold. And the photo at 7 o'clock revealed the same thing, plus some of the cars down the street are gone. And the applicant did a parking survey at 7 o'clock and found that on the building as a whole, on all the streets surrounding the building, there were 103 empty parking spaces. So in the evening, when the court will have most of its business, there's plenty of parking on the street. During the weekdays, when they do propose to have some hours, I did this survey because we're doing the Park Avenue rebuilding, and we were worried about parking the people that are on Park Avenue. And there's no parking right around that building, and there is a little parking in the area. So that's a little bit of a problem. Based on experience in Menlo Park, Mr. Yang expects only 2 courts to be active during the midday hours. That's what he's found where his other club is. So we crafted a condition of approval that restricts play from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., which is when the industrial people are in the neighborhood, to just 4 courts, unless the people on the other courts get there some other way besides solo driving. This means that if the recreation department uses the courts in between, then they have to have people come to the recreation department and put them all in a van and take them all over there together. So that was our attempt to solve the daytime parking problem. And Recreation Center Manager Greg Brannon has said that, yes, they could schedule classes so that they are when the van is available. So, to summarize, here's the daytime restrictions. Transportation-related conditions of approval. The street improvements include bicycle parking, a pedestrian walkway, and removal of the red curb striping, freeing up parking across the street. And during operation, a customer discount, employee trip reduction, which is a standard condition, and a daytime 4-court limit for solo drivers.
So they're going to need an encroachment permit to do
Yeah.
the
And they already know
right-of-way
that.
modifications, okay?
So, to make parking variance findings, they could be, the hardship finding is difficult truck access for industrial uses, And then the findings about non-detriment are that they are reusing a small portion of the existing building. They have a smaller parking requirement than the previous use. They would create on-street parking by not having a backup space across the street. They would offer their customers a discount for using alternative transportation. They would provide bike racks for 20% of their occupants, which is like 4 times what we require generally. They would have a daytime use restriction for solo drivers, and the use would improve health by providing a place for people to exercise and improve safety by enlivening the area in the evenings and on the weekends. So the applicant is here. I don't know if you want to ask me any questions before he comes up, or you want to just hear from him next.
Any questions to Diana? Thanks, Diana. So the applicant like to, oh, did you have a question, Cal?
Jim, before we start, maybe we should have a motion to go past 11:30.
Oh, do we usually do that? Yes. Do we have a, does the commission do that? Just the council? Okay, let's have a motion to extend.
Move to extend.
So motion by
Diane.
Flores and second by,
Do without
Diane?
exception if you want.
okay, without
Diana,
exception.
our council- well,
I wasn't, thank you, Patty. I was like, what's going on here?
Does the applicant plan to do anything to the exterior of the building, like painting or landscaping or anything like that?
The applicant is not planning to do anything to the building. As a separate thing that staff is planning to do a minor design review on, the owner of the building is thinking about putting, in fact, I think there's one little trial one up, some awnings. They're look nice awnings. They're perforated metal, and some trellises. They're called green screens, metal trellises, mostly on the corners, and some painting. So the building would be changed to yellow under the awnings and sort of a beige with purple. What?
You said the entire building is to be painted?
That's what they plan to do, the owners. So we are planning to do that as a staff level design review, unless you would really like us to bring it to you.
No, I just want.
No, I don't.
And it's a separate thing from this application.
Okay, thanks, Diana. Is that it, Art?
Yeah.
Okay. Would the applicant like to make a brief presentation? We'll open the public hearing. We're going to hear from the applicant.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. My name is Mike Yan, and I'm the owner of Golden Gate Badminton Club. Currently, we have one club in Menlo Park. We've been serving the recreational department of the city and the surrounding community for 2 years. And we found Emeryville is a very vibrant and diversified community. We hope we can come here and work with the recreational department and serve the community.
Great.
Thank you.
Any questions of the applicant? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? If so, please introduce yourself, and then when you're finished, you can sign in here. You have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, Michael Stassi. I'm helping Mike design this place, and just to answer the question about the interior and the difference, we found the same thing, so we went back to the site and measured it again on the interior, so the drawing is correct. The previous drawing I can't explain, but
Okay.
the drawing that was submitted
So
is
it
correct.
is rectangular, and that is the.
It's actually, we didn't go back and redraw it because there was a 2-foot difference, which made really no difference in the plan. But the way that they, or that drawing from the original 1971 construction, or whatever that drawing represents, is incorrect.
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
thanks.
I do have one other question.
Gail has a question to you.
Yeah.
We did already.
It's, but I do have a question of you. The sign that you're proposing on the side of the building, is that the same sign that you're using at your other location?
Yes,
The same lighting and the level of lighting
that's
and all
correct.
that? And
Yes.
So you know that it's not going to pose a problem as far as projecting light across the
No,
street?
it doesn't. No. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good night. Yes. My name is Kate Rutter. I'm a resident at 1500 Park Avenue, and I think it sounds, I happen to come for another reason, but this sounds like a pretty interesting business to have in that area. I'm pretty concerned about the exterior of the Banker Marks building on that side. Putting in bollards and a pedestrian walkway isn't maybe as easy as it originally sounds. The concrete's and asphalt's in terrible condition, and there are the railroad tracks. So I would just encourage that maybe everybody take a good look and make sure that's feasible before, or at least that it would work for making that an attractive entrance, because I have serious doubts about that, especially if there's also adjacent parking. I guess the last thing is, I know there's a separate initiative underway about the exterior of the Banker Marks building, but at one point the owners did come to a Park Avenue District Advisory Committee meeting and talk about a sincere desire to improve the exterior of the building, and I know there's been some direction in that. But it'd be terrific if this great new business would be an incentive to doing more than just a sign and a couple of bike racks. So I want you to think about that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? This is your opportunity. Patty, can you flick the lights behind you there?
My name's Mike McConnell, and I live at 1500 Park Avenue.
Oh,
She wants them on.
So I live in 1500 Park Avenue, and I walk up Hubbard every day on a walk I take. The condition in this neighborhood, it's difficult to say because there's been so much construction. They've been tearing up the street, but they're going to tear up the street again. They're about to underground. For most of the 2 years I've lived here, my wife sees clients in our house about 6 hours a week, and uniformly, at least once a day, someone says, I couldn't find parking. That's why I'm late for my appointment. So there have been parking problems in this neighborhood. I have no objection to this, for this use of this space, but it has to be considered in the context of there are parking problems and there are going to be more parking problems in this neighborhood. Part of it is this is painted red. That doesn't need to be if this isn't going to be a warehouse. Now down here at Interior Motions, I don't understand the issue of trucks not being able to turn on Park Avenue because Interior Motions loading dock is right here. Trucks turn off Park Avenue and unload into Interior Motions all the time. So that may be a red herring. Either they're doing it illegally or this hardship case doesn't exist. Because that's the only case for the zoning variance is the hardship of the landlord. So if we're weighing the hardship...
How long are those trucks that unload there? Are they?
It's a furniture warehouse. It's a store, and they sell office furniture. Big trucks pull into a loading dock and unload their furniture there all the time. So the hardship of the residents versus the hardship of the perhaps hardship of the owner of the warehouse. I think you got to put the 100 residents over the interests of the warehouse owner. I really do. I think there are ways to make this club work. I'm assuming 8 courts full of 32 people, 32 cars in our neighborhood at peak times. I think that some of clearly they're making effort to mitigate this, but I think there needs to be some traffic planning done. For example, I don't know if this is legal, but down at Interior Motions, where people park, they park diagonally instead of parallel. There's plenty of room on that street to do that. So before his loading dock down here, he fits about twice as many cars in. If you're not going to have trucks coming down that street, you may be able to do diagonal parking here. This is also red, by the way, for Sherman-Williams. This whole back of this of our building is all red. So there's no parking here. There's no parking here. And you got a very wide street. So if you can do some, I don't know what jurisdiction traffic versus planning is, but there's room for more parking in this neighborhood. It's just not available right now, and we don't know what Blue Star Corner is going to do. That's going to, when you build a loft, what we found is 2 people live in the loft. They each have cars. There's 1 parking space. We have 2 parking spaces. We're lucky, but the Blue Star Corner will add to the parking. Whatever happens on the Sherman-Williams site is going to cause problems. So we're just concerned that what is now a really lovely cul-de-sac where I can walk with my grandson down and watch the trains go by, one of the few places you can still put pennies on the track in the West Coast, or at least in the East Bay. And watch the trains go by. It's a lovely walking neighborhood right now, and if it's going to be a new business that is basically for commuters to drive into the neighborhood, I'd love to find a way to accommodate it, but right now it looks like a negative to us, a negative to the neighborhood. And I think it's solvable. I don't know if it's solvable by the Planning Commission or by the, without how the parking is handled, but I hope you won't approve it unless we have some mitigation of the traffic problems. I think it can be solved. It just has to be solved, because right now we can't handle more traffic and more parking. Thank you.
Thank you. And you signed it already? I have, yes. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Patricia Jeffrey, 1500 Park Avenue. I also live at the Emeryville Warehouse Lofts. To start off, I think it's I don't have any problems with the use. I think it's a way to activate that neighborhood. I've previously served on the Park Avenue Advisory Committee, and we were always looking at various kinds of uses that could help to liven up that area during the day and in the evening. So I think it could be a great use. It's providing another opportunity for recreation in our city, which we don't have many of. I do have a couple of questions to ask, and then I have some recommended changes for conditions of approval. The first question I have is, will there be tournaments held at any time during the year, competition, that type of thing?
Okay.
That would generate more traffic because there would be more people coming. And then the second question I have is, and this might tie in with tournaments, will loud whistles be used inside? Because there's the possibility, depending upon how this building is ventilated, that those whistles could be heard next door. And then the next question I have is, what's the term of the lease? Has that been discussed in terms of how long this use would be located before they would be up for renewal? Because that ties into one of the conditions I'm going to recommend.
Okay. Should we get answers to those questions before you make your suggestions?
Yeah,
okay.
I'd like that.
Would the applicant please come up or someone knowledgeable? So the first question is,
Yes.
I can't read my handwriting at this
Will there
hour.
be tournaments?
Tournaments.
Yeah.
And explain the use there.
We don't plan to have tournament here in Emeryville because we do the tournament in Menlo Park right now. And so...
How many courts are there in Menlo Park?
We have the same 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there some aspect of the conditions of approval that limit tournament play
We
at
could
the
put
facility?
that in.
Okay. And what about whistles in your play? I don't remember.
We never use whistles, actually.
Never.
Yeah.
So there's no air horns, there's no whistles. there's
Yeah,
no-
it's
okay.
actually a very quiet
Okay.
sport. Yeah.
When you do have tournaments, what time of day, what day of the week?
You mean when
typically?
we do in the Menlo Park? It's always weekend, and we did that 3 times a year there. Yeah.
And so you're agreeable, since you're not having tournaments at this facility, if we have a specific reference to that, no tournaments in
Yeah.
our condition?
Yeah,
okay,
we-
in the
we-
condition
it's
of
okay.
approval, you're agreeable
Yeah.
to that, okay.
Would
And
you
then,
want that even on a weekend or an evening?
he's saying that they're not doing tournaments.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or
you're
if
saying
we
during
can
the week
apply
would be
for
easier
it,
then.
if, you know.
Okay.
Special occasion, it's a special use, one-time use.
Right. If there's a special occasion, say, I don't know.
Okay, so how
maybe
about
in
during the week, that you be restricted from having tournaments during the week, but on Saturday and Sunday within the specified hours
Yeah.
that I think are already in the condition? That would be acceptable to you?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Then the last thing is the terms of the lease. Do you have a lease arrangement in place?
We are done with our negotiation. We are waiting for the lease to.
Is it a 1-year lease or a 10-year lease?
It's actually a 5-year.
5-year lease.
Yeah, and with a renewal option. It's a
Okay.
couple- yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
explanation.
Yeah.
Patty, did you have some recommendations? Start her clock again.
Okay, under the conditions of approval, on page 5, public improvements, 4A, there's presently now 3 sub-conditions within that item number 1, the street improvements. Under item C, I would like to change that to be more specific, to read parking, removal of the red curb striping on the west side of Hubbard Street. That's the side of our building.
Well, that has to be approved by the traffic committee and the city council.
So what I asked the applicant to do is after the planning commission approval, if there is a planning commission approval, that he would go to the transportation committee and request that. So I guess I should change it to that.
Okay. So you'll modify that, and I think Patty's suggestion that you specify the west side of Hubbard is good to clarify what we're talking about. So applicant will seek restriping to remove the red curb on the west side of Hubbard through the traffic committee and then the
Okay.
council.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't see these conditions before because I was out. The ball is ready to go to traffic committee.
We can take this whole thing to the traffic committee. All the improvements.
Okay, well, I'll just continue with my recommendations then, and the traffic committee can consider them.
Okay.
And then I'd like to add and this might be on automatic, but I just want to make sure it's clear in here, because one thing that's represented on, it's not completely correct. I'm going to be really picky about some of these drawings. On the blown-up drawing that shows the improvements along Hubbard and interior,
sheet number?
there isn't a sheet number on this. It's this one here.
Okay.
Yeah. It says existing public parking spaces, and it shows these public parking spaces. Presently, parking is not allowed between 8 and 5 p.m., so those parking spaces are now only available after 5 p.m. So I'd like to have a condition added that just says item D, remove no parking sign from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. On east side of Hubbard Street to allow on-street, to make it clear
Good.
that parking is allowed
And
there.
this is all going to be part of this consolidated traffic committee.
City, this is all getting into city council and ordinances. Yes,
Right.
yes.
Good.
So
Okay.
it may or may not be approved by the council.
Right.
And then, and this one isn't really for the condition of this project, because it's
But
not their
before we leave-
responsibility.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
And before we leave that, there was a suggestion earlier about looking at restriping the parking, doing diagonal to maximize on-street parking along that street.
Also city council. And
I understand, but I'm saying at the same time, I think it would be useful to look at that.
Well,
Obviously-
technically, I would say that in order to have angle parking on one side, you would have to have no parking on the other side if you wanted to have a pedestrian walkway next to the building,
And I would
which I think you need to have.
question how this conforms with the Park Avenue District Plan.
Is that, yes, the
Open
experts?
can of worms.
Would diagonal parking
I'm not
conflict
sure the
with?
Park Avenue District Plan addresses diagonal parking.
It does, I
It's
remember.
It
specific
calls for sidewalks here,
sidewalks.
Okay.
but this is a
And-
5-year lease. I'm thinking of down the road when I think sidewalks here.
Oh, you're talking about temporary diagonal parking?
Well, I see this use is a 5-year lease.
Okay, so why does, if your point then is at some point it's going to redevelop, possibly in 5 or more years, then that's when we'd have a permanent sidewalk? I don't understand
I'm
your
thinking
point,
if the
Diana.
entire building gets redeveloped, that's when we would have a permanent sidewalk. That this is
Oh.
only a small portion
Okay.
of this building.
Yes.
And I would just also add about the diagonal parking.
I hope this isn't cutting into my
Oh,
time.
Patty. Oh.
Okay, I'm just checking.
The
Stopped it at 7 seconds.
yeah, you have 7 seconds after this. That I think it's been demonstrated that the project would not generate a lot of parking demand during the hours when it would have its peak usage, and Diana included some conditions of approval to address that during the day. So to require diagonal parking along this entire block as in conjunction with this application, I think is probably not reasonable.
Okay. No, it was just a suggestion. If you're going to the traffic committee, look at
The city could do
parking
that
thing.
as a separate
Right.
independent
But
action on its own.
But
I
it will not
appreciate-
fit with parking across the
Right,
street
and
and
I
a
appreciate
walkway
Diana's
in front of the
comments.
building.
Right. And I don't think we should pursue diagonal then, so I withdraw my suggestion. And Patty will continue.
Okay, let's see. I lost my train of thought here. Well, one thing that I wanted to recommend that goes beyond this project, and my neighbor had pointed this out to you, there's also red zone on the north side of the Emeryville warehouse building that, on the Sherwin frontage, and I would like for the traffic committee to consider removing that, because again, we don't have the 18-wheelers. That would free up a lot more parking. I
There's
think,
white, too. There's red and white, all faded together in pink.
yeah, well, I think we need to remove it, and there should be on-street parking allowed there.
Let's just include that at the same time. The traffic committee
I don't know if
recommends
that
it.
serves the Chiron Novartis tenant somehow. I don't know the history of that striping.
Well, if you can do it at the same time with the traffic committee, go ahead. It's right around the
Notice
corner.
them and ask them. If
Yes.
yeah.
Well, it was there because of the 18-wheelers pulling in and out of the loading docks for Sherwin-Williams. They're not there anymore. They're not knocking our trees down anymore on that side of the block, so I think we could eliminate the red zone.
So you're talking about your block?
Yeah,
or-
our block,
oh, your block. Okay.
yeah, between Hubbard and Halleck. Eliminate that. And then this is a condition that would, a new condition. And this one would read, and I don't know if it goes where this one would go, and maybe Carol can figure that one out. But I like to have a condition that says something such as, at the 5th year of operation, a parking survey shall be completed by a qualified traffic firm to determine if adequate on-street parking is available. And the reason I'm asking for that is there's going to be a lot of construction in that neighborhood. We're all looking forward to the undergrounding of the utility lines on Park Avenue and the sidewalk improvements. Sherwin-Williams someday will be happening, perhaps within the next 5 years. And we just wanted to point out that right now, there isn't a problem in terms of parking in the evening. It's just during the daytime. However, there was a problem for some of the residents in our building when EB Mudd and PG&E were doing their work in preparation of the undergrounding the utilities. There was laydown areas. They were parking their trucks. A lot of the parking within our area was off limits. So residents were parking a couple blocks down on Park Avenue. So when we start getting some of this other residential coming in, there's 1401, all of those projects are going to be impacted. So there will be a parking problem at some point in time in the future. Now it'll be temporary, but it will create problems for residents and businesses throughout that area. So I'd like to have a condition added that would revisit that issue in terms of where we are in 5 years.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Please sign in. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Questions before we go to comments? No questions, comments?
Great project, recreation in a neighborhood that needs it. Love it. I move to approve.
Okay, before we take a second on that, any, we had suggestions?
I think it's a great project, too. I think the parking in this area is so bad that this isn't going to have any impact on it. I think the owner is taking a risk that people are actually going to use it because they're going to have to walk so far, at least during the day, but that's something obviously he's willing to do. I mean, the only place you can really park is in the parking lots on the far side of 40th Street for those big box stores, and there's always space there.
And I really bet half the people will bike or walk there, and I bet you it'll be
You
people
think
around here.
they'll
I
do
think
that?
they will.
Well, part of the assumption in the traffic discussion is that most people, it's going to be after hours that people come to use this, or on the weekends. So based on the demand that we've seen, we're assuming, or at least staff's assuming, that it's not going to be an issue or a significant issue. Any other comments? Oh,
Is there a public?
into the microphone.
Is there a public garage plan for the Park Avenue district in that area?
There are 5 public garages mentioned in the Park Avenue District Plan, but they pretty much depend on when sites develop. In fact, there's one for this block in the plan,
You mean
for
where the
when
building
this site
is?
develops.
Well, I'm confused because they said there was a reasonable amount of parking, but if we remove all these red zones, is it your opinion that it will be adequate parking during the day?
Well, I
With
don't
their
know if the neighborhood will have
based on their
adequate problem
restricted use and
parking,
everything?
but the applicant has said that people who play together tend to come in one car. If that's true, then they have enough parking around their building. If they add parking across the street and on Sherwin Avenue, both at the Emeryville warehouse lofts and possibly the Chiron Novartis frontage, if they don't need that red, white, pink curb, then I think they would add as much parking to the street as they're going to use.
Okay.
Well, would it be 2-hour parking?
I
or
would
something
second
like
the
that?
motion.
Okay. Well, before I'll take the second, I'm going to. Did you have any comments?
No, I think it's a really interesting use, and it sounds like there is going to be more parking freed up that would accommodate it, and especially since most of the use would be nights and weekends, it seems like it's
And
workable.
they're going to use it, and the recreation department gets to use the courts.
So the 2 points I'd like to make, and actually
That's
suggest modifications to the conditions of approval. This is a big, long frontage. I'd like to see some kind of large plant container on either side of your entrance door there, so that you got something that says that's the entrance there. And I don't care if you water it by hand, but I'd like to personally see something that improves that. I like the idea of providing some protected foot passage with the bollards and the temporary sidewalk. Obviously, if it's a condition with the surface treatment or something else, it's something the city's got to address because it's a city right away and we don't want people tripping. The other suggestion I'm going to make in the change to the condition of approval that I hope the motion maker will agree to is on page 8, under item 6C, I suggest a new condition of approval to provide an annual 1-year review. We did this over at Linen Life, and what I did some draft language that at 1 year we review the parking, that the applicant conduct a parking study to confirm that no significant problems have arisen out of the approval, and it's to be verified by staff and reported back to the Planning Commission at 1 year from condition or occupancy, and if there are any significant impacts, the applicant shall remedy on-site or through payment of in lieu fees. I'd like to confirm that, in fact, all these assumptions around parking are valid, and have this annual review. We've done it before, and it's been reported back to us before, both with regard to noise and parking. And I'd just like to hear back that it's not a problem. And I'd like to ask the planning director if that's a problem, to include that condition. Did
It's
it
okay
make
with
sense? Okay.
Well, I think we'd like to get your language. I mean, if you can give it to us
Is
so
one
we
of
make
your
sure we.
If you can read this.
We have to
Is
read.
one of your
Have it.
A
remedies
year
that they
from
would
now,
then be
Park
required to
Avenue is
pay?
going to be under construction. There will be problems, but they won't be problems caused by this applicant.
So should I suggest there was a suggestion tonight as a 5-year review, which to me is too far down the road. I'd like to confirm that when this is up and operational, it doesn't pose a problem. So is there
it
a
wants
timing?
to be to confirm that this use isn't generating more parking than
Linen
it
Life, we had a
created.
6-month review to make sure there wasn't a noise behavior disturbance there. So they came back in 6 months. So is there a way to specify a time to avoid all the disruption that the improvements in Park Avenue may pose, where we can get a real confirmation? When are they going to start tearing up Park Avenue in that area?
I'm not sure. I think they're almost ready to go.
Oh.
Sometime this year, I think. I've forgotten.
And then it's going to be staged over, I don't know how long, but it's going to be staged over a period of time, block by block.
It's going to take a year. And at some point, most of it will not be parkable. So
Does
there's going to
staff
be a
any-
bad
does-
time.
Does staff have any suggestion on how to try to capture a verification of this?
You want to make it 2 years? Or when the Park Avenue, how about when the Park
Following
Avenue improvements are
completion of the Park
completed?
Avenue
Following completion
area
of the Park
improvements.
Avenue improvements.
Okay,
Well-
you got that part. Does that
Do
make
we-
sense to everybody?
I think 1 year is too soon. He said 2 years?
Well, whenever Park Avenue improvements are finished.
Okay.
So
agree.
that doesn't
That's fine.
factor into
Are we
the.
asking the applicant to do this or the owner?
Well, they did it before and staff didn't have a problem with it. My suggestion is the applicant do a study and it get verified by
applicant.
staff.
Well, what's the remedy?
Well, if
In
they either
lieu
remedy
fee.
on-site or some other solution, or they pay their in lieu fee.
Pay in lieu fee.
Right.
Okay.
If there's
The
a traffic
applicant may
problem-
not go in if they have to pay that in lieu fee. It's $58,000.
Pardon? No, I'm saying in this review in 2 years.
Yeah, but he doesn't want to take a risk that 2 years from now, all of a sudden he has to pay $58,000.
Well, he's telling us that there's no problem with the parking.
True.
And we're agreeing that there's no problem with the parking without.
No problem means he does not generate more parking than is created
Well, if
and
we get
exists
to the
in
point
front
in
of his
2
frontage.
years
Not
that.
that there's no parking in the problem in the neighborhood.
Well, if there's no parking, he's the one that's going to suffer, because then his business
No, I
falls
understand.
off.
I mean, if there's a hardship in 2 years, he can go appeal it to the council. We are making an assumption around the conditions.
Well, I think
We're kind of, so, what I see is you're doing it with this application, and then we're gonna start doing it with every application, and then the approval that they have is no longer, there's
Why don't,
really an approval, because other conditions can be placed on them in the
What-
future
what-
after the investment's already been made.
And
So,
also-
I think in this particular circumstance, it might not be as significant. It's a very small project. Likely the parking's gonna be fine. But in terms of establishing a precedent of going down this path, I see some problems with it. And at least before we start imposing those conditions, I think staff needs an opportunity to kind of evaluate what that means. Not just for this project, but for all our projects and for land use approvals in general.
You mean a post-construction report back? Because we've done that before, Carol.
Oh, the in lieu fee condition.
Oh,
Well, yeah, the in lieu fee, but not on, the Linen Life was, my understanding was not a parking, it was a noise.
And my recollection of the Linen Life situation was that there was not really a study done. It was simply a report back to the commission as to whether or not we'd
There
had
weren't
any
complaints.
complaints.
Right.
And we hadn't received no complaints, so we just came and told you we had received no complaints. It wasn't a very scientific study.
So
I just have,
offer a solution. I'd like to know that this isn't a problem.
yeah.
Maybe the rest of the commission isn't concerned.
I
about it.
think personally, I made the motion. I would not want to discourage this particular applicant in that particular small space. I think that the parking's not an issue at all, and I wouldn't want to discourage him from signing a 5-year lease for
If
badminton.
the parking doesn't work, he's the one that
I think the
suffers, no one
compromise
else.
could be 5 years review, and then he won't exercise his option. Then he's not put in any financial bind.
I agree.
I agree.
I would
with
go
that.
with 5 years just because
Then,
of the.
then
Oh, Patty, you're so smart.
I think.
5 years ties in with his option to renew, and then
But our
he's not under
conditions
any
are not
finan-
tied to his lease. That's just a
Right.
coincidence.
I think,
I know.
one of the, really what we're doing is we're giving him a 5-year conditional use permit.
Yeah.
In that way, and I really, if that's what we're gonna do, I'd rather you continue this hearing and give us, it's midnight. I don't wanna opine off the top of my head whether that's appropriate or not. It's certainly a departure from our practice.
Okay,
and I
well,
need to
you
let
know what? We have a motion. If there's a second and a vote, then if people are unhappy with the decision, they can appeal it to the council.
Okay,
So
my
we
motion
have a-
stands.
We have a motion. Is there, the
We've
the
been
motion
advi-
was
we've
to
been
accept
advised
the
not to-
approval without any additional condition.
I'll second that.
I have a question.
I thought we weren't going to do this again.
We have a motion by Commissioner Flores and a second by Commissioner Hoff.
Right.
Well, I didn't technically accept your second, but that's fine. We'll go back to that.
Oh.
Well, when Buzz seconded.
Oh, he can have it.
Well, and this is
All right.
with no additional conditions. Is that right?
Well, I'd like to clarify.
Outside of the other conditions that actually Patty
Well,
made
The
and
traffic committee.
Jim made.
Citizen Jeffrey
Citizen
suggested some conditions to you all.
Yes.
I did not hear the commission make those changes to the conditions.
Could you repeat them, please, Charlie?
They were mainly in item 4A1 about street improvements, that the parking removal on the red curb, instead of saying across Hubbard Street, say on the west side of Hubbard Street, and then adding a D and E under there to remove the no parking sign from 8 to 5 on Hubbard and remove the red curb on Sherwin Avenue. And then we would modify this condition, I think we would do this anyway,
Right.
to clarify that these are all subject to traffic committee and city council approval.
Good.
She also suggested the 5-year review of parking, but.
Which I would not
Would not take.
be part of the
Okay.
motion.
And Commissioner Martin suggested planters on either side of the doors,
Can add that.
which are, by the way, I was going to say about those will require an encroachment permit because they're in the public right-of-way.
But don't the bollards and everything require it? And the bike racks? And
I
all
think
the
it would
other-
all be, well,
Why don't we just take all the stuff in the public right-of-way to the Transportation Committee?
The question is whether it needs an encroachment permit.
Well,
But
yeah, we
have
already know there's an encroachment permit going to happen.
Right. So, Charlie, what's it matter whether we add to the encroachment permit?
I'm just
couple-
telling you.
Okay. Thanks. So, are you, does the
and-
motion include some pots at
The
the
plan,
door?
that includes the planners, doesn't it?
It would include the planners.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay.
Including the
Yes,
plan.
and tournaments only on weekends.
Oh, thank you for the reminder.
Correct.
And you didn't say anything about whistles because they're not going to have any.
That's right. He clarified that.
Oh, but there's a
clarified that it
noise
wasn't-
condition.
Well, there's a standard noise condition.
Okay.
Complying.
Okay, so that's the exhaustive motion.
Is that
And
So
we have
moved.
a second.
that it?
Except
And let's have the roll call.
Commissioner Cardoza.
Aye.
Commissioner Flores.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoff.
aye.
Vice Chair Donaldson.
Aye.
Chair Martin.
Aye.
5 ayes, the application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Congratulations. We're trusting you'll work out
I'm
the
going to
parking
come
issue.
play badminton.
Good. You'll report back on the
I
parking
will report
situation.
back. I will
Thank
go
you,
play
during
that.
Commissioner comments. Okay, the last public hearing item. Good night. The last public hearing item is the Park Avenue District Plan implementation, and this is Diana's.
Do the neighbors have to leave the table again?
It's going to be a problem.
Oh, no, not on this, because it involves the whole.
I bet you that he'll be lucky if he
District.
gets people coming out to that.
Is that, is that correct?
Oh, I like the idea of the youth,
Carol, is that correct?
but there are some.
Carol? It's okay. Are you participating in this, Commissioner?
Trying to determine whether
Oh,
I
that-
should recuse myself or not.
Oh,
I thought because of the,
I am in the district.
right, I know we have at least two.
This is what happens at,
Midnight.
yeah.
In earlier meetings, the full commission participated in the discussion on the Park Avenue District Plan and its adoption.
Public generally.
But we didn't vote, did we?
No, we did on the approval.
So during the date, so.
I have to go down and look at it.
You know, well, let's hold commissioner comments while you run
have to
down there
recuse
fast.
Not that quick.
Okay.
I need to go down. My advice.
Sister's at my house and locked out.
What's our problem now?
Yeah, that
Commissioner-
would be my advice.
Okay,
What's the
the advice is that Commissioner Jeffrey and Jermaine recuse
For what, the next
for the
item?
Park Avenue District plan implementation, because you
Okay.
reside within the district and we're not
Okay.
sure.
Hopefully this is going to go by fast, or.
Yeah.
I have some commissioner comments.
Oh, okay.
That's very strict interpretation of the law, Carol, I'll have you know.
Coffee served after 10 o'clock.
The bigger you're asked, the more conservative it gets.
Okay.
Okay.
Diane.
This is a
Hit
general
it.
plan amendment and one of 3 zoning amendments implementing the Park Avenue District Plan. Tonight's amendments apply just to the district, and future amendments will apply citywide. The general plan amendment is to increase the floor area ratio in the Park Avenue District from 0.7 to 1.4. The zoning ordinance amendment is to establish the Park Avenue Overlay District and define the district boundaries on the zoning district map to include these parcels. And incorporate the Park Avenue District Plan by reference, prohibit gasoline sales, hazardous waste facilities, and personal storage in the district, allow a floor area ratio bonus in the district under certain conditions, and allow a parking credit for reuse of significant buildings. The floor area ratio bonus applies is 1.0 FAR for a total of 2.4 FAR for projects that include any of the following: desired uses, residential, cultural library, parks and recreation, public parking, administrative business offices, professional services, medical services, and custom manufacturing. Or publicly accessible parking equal to 10% of the required parking, or publicly accessible open space equal to 10% of the lot size, or cleanup of contaminants as required by a regulatory agency, or use or reuse of a Tier 1 or 2 architecturally significant building. The way the parking credit works, if you have a Tier 1 or 2 architecturally significant building, it's in an existing low-intensity use, it has a legal non-conforming parking deficiency. For example, if the building is 20,000 square feet and it's in a warehouse use, its requirement is 1 space per 1,000, that's 20 spaces. It has 15 spaces, it has a shortage of 5 spaces. You want to turn it into offices, the requirement is 3 spaces per 1,000. You would need 60 spaces, but you get credit for those 5 spaces. The warehouse is deficient, so your requirement becomes 55 spaces. So, next month, we hope to bring a zoning ordinance amendment establishing a minor use permit, we hope, if not the month after that, and which allows the planning director to grant use permits for certain situations. And toward the end of this year, we hope to bring you a revamped parking ordinance which will include bicycle parking standards. And that will complete the legislative changes to called for in the Park Avenue District Plan. So staff recommends that the commission recommend council adoption of these amendments to the general plan and zoning ordinance. Any questions?
So there've been, well, I won't even go there. Any questions? Let's open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item? Come on, Kate. You sat through the whole meeting.
You may as well stand up.
We want to hear.
Hi, my name's Kate. I'm at 1500 Park Avenue and a resident and a member of the Park Avenue District Advisory Committee, and I would like to encourage your approval of this.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Former members of the district? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any comments? Motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, so we have a commission motion from Donaldson and second from Flores. We have a roll?
Do we have a planning director?
Come on. Roll call, Charlie.
That time of night.
Not used to that.
I didn't expect you to be done with it so fast. All right, we're voting on the
Park Avenue District
both
Plan
things?
implementation.
The ordinance and the...
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So all we need is a roll call.
Yeah, I got you. I'm with you. Commissioner Cardoza?
Aye.
Commissioner Flores?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoff?
Aye.
Vice Chair Donaldson?
Aye.
Chair Martin?
Aye.
5 ayes.
Thank you, Kate and Patty and all the members of the Park Avenue District Committee for all their years of hard work, which I'm sure will continue. And with that, we'll go on to Commissioner comments. Any important comments at 12:10?
Just that Woka meeting today when they said Emeryville 3 times and everyone agreed was just discouraging.
Wow.
And then I did get up and say, it's not all that bad in Emeryville. Come on out and take a look.
Hard.
We're working hard over there. So.
We'll get it right.
Okay, any other comments? With seeing none, we will close the meeting.
They can wait. He's got a sister waiting.
Oh, did you
for
have
him.
some comments?
They can wait till next time.
Good night, everyone.